Hello, and welcome to another episode of the STEM Confidence Podcast. In this episode, I want to discuss with you some of the most common mistakes people make when explaining their STEM work in a written format. So, the first and most common mistake is writing without a plan. My clients often tell me that they postponed their writing until the last minute because it is a task that they don't actually like. And what I always tell them is that the reason for the overwhelm they feel isn't because they like or dislike writing, but because they don't have a plan to execute that writing effectively. In the same way you would get lost if traveling without a map, chances are that you are going to get lost when starting to write without knowing what you actually want to say. And this is why I always suggest my clients to design a writing plan. And I know that when you're so busy and close to the deadline, the last thing you want to think about is designing a plan. Like, who has the time to do so when the only thing you need to do is get the job done? But here is why I believe that having a plan actually saves you time. Primarily because it helps you get out of your head and it provides you a roadmap to execute your goal. So, hopefully, I convinced you that it actually is a good idea to have a writing plan. So, let's dive into how to do it. So, the first and most important thing is to ask yourself what it is that you actually want to tell in your writing piece. This part is important because it defines your main topic. A question that helps defining your main topic is, what do I want my reader to know? And once you have your main topic, you can split it into smaller points. And these points are usually answers to the following questions. What did I do? How did I do it? And why is it important? What I usually do is that I suggest to my clients that they can use the answers to these questions as titles for their sections or chapters. So once you've done that, you have your main topic and you have split it into several smaller points. Your next task is to provide some keywords that define each of these sections or chapters. If you are writing a shorter piece, your writing plan can stop here and it would be enough for you to know what to write about and when. In the case that you are writing a longer piece, for example, like an article or a thesis, you want to provide even more context to your writing plan. You can do so by establishing a clear cohesion behind all the sections and chapters. And here is how this is done. So, apart from defining what each of these sections has to contain, you also offer a connection between them. For example, imagine that you have an introduction chapter and you have already defined what it will say. What you want to do is to connect it to a method section. To do so, you can think of one cohesive sentence that actually connects the two. For example, a good sentence could be, to investigate X, we did Y. By having established that, you don't have to worry about thinking what to write. You will have a well-defined plan that will work absolutely every time. Alright, now that we have defined our writing plan, let's move on to the second mistake. So, the second mistake is something that I see happening all the time in the texts that I'm reading, whether they are scientific papers or any other kind of technical writing. People tend to write as if they were doing it for themselves, without even taking a moment to think about what their reader actually needs. Alright, so let's address how to avoid this mistake. First of all, effective communication is a two-way street, which requires both clarity from the sender and understanding from the receiver. Too often, writers focus only on conveying their message without considering how this message will be received. And it is quite common that this oversight can lead to confusion, frustration, and eventually disengagement on the part of the reader. To avoid this, always put yourself in your audience's shoes. You should consider their level of knowledge and familiarity with the subject that you are writing about. Ask yourself, are they experts in the field or are they newcomers seeking maybe some basic information? Once you have this question answered, tailor your language and explanations accordingly. This means that you should avoid jargon and technical terms that might sound unfamiliar to your audience. As an additional tip, it is really useful to provide context. This helps your readers understand the importance and relevance of your work. A good question to ask yourself to provide better context for your reader is, why should they care about what you're saying? What impact does your work actually have on their lives or the broader community? And by addressing these questions, you make your writing sort of more relatable and also more engaging to a wider audience. In conclusion, effective communication in STEM writing requires really careful planning and also consideration of your audience's perspective. By crafting a clear writing plan and by prioritizing simplicity and context, you really make sure that your message resonates with your readers by making complex STEM ideas more accessible and more engaging. Thank you for listening to this episode, and until next time. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you are ready to elevate your communication skills and transform your data into valuable insights, schedule a free discovery call on the link in the description.